Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Carlos and I'm an AWS and Google certified cloud engineer. I was asked to help expand this course with a couple of Pipeline as Code lectures and I immediately said yes. I use Jenkins on a daily basis in my job and I think it's an amazing tool that has pushed DevOps to the forefront of our careers. In this lecture, we're going to start with a simple example, so feel free to sit back and just watch. But in the following lecture, I'll ask you to follow along as we convert our current web application pipeline into code. Let's begin. Pipeline as Code is a very convenient way to define and maintain your Jenkins pipeline. It uses a DSL, or domain-specific language, to allow you to define the tasks that you want Jenkins to perform. And the best part is, you get to include your Jenkins-specific commands in the repository itself. It lives where your code lives. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're going to start off discussing why you need it, all the benefits that you get from it, and then we'll set it up and I'll show you a simple example. In the next lecture, we'll go deeper and we will convert our current pipeline into code that's going to be included in our web project's GitHub repository, and Jenkins will take it from there. Let's get started. So as we said in the previous slide, a Jenkins pipeline can be defined in a text file called a Jenkins file that you include in the root of your repo. This is very useful if your company has many Jenkins jobs to keep track of, because now you have all the benefits of software development available to your pipeline. Version control is one of those, and thanks to branches and pull requests, others get a chance to review the changes before the pipeline is actually changed. Usually, when you execute a series of jobs manually in Jenkins, you run the risk of forgetting something. With a code-based pipeline, this is no longer an issue. You also have access to performing actions automatically based on timeouts, failure, or success of the steps of your job. Of course, you could do all this manually in the Jenkins web interface, but it's so much more convenient when you just type a few commands, put them in a version control file, and they stay there forever as part of your project. Before we proceed with our simple demonstration, let's take a look at what a Jenkins file looks like. By the way, if you want proper syntax highlighting when working with these files, set your code editor to Groovy. In case you don't know, Groovy is a Java-based scripting language and is the backbone that validates and executes your Jenkins file. Because this is a lengthy topic, we can't possibly cover every feature that is available to you in the Jenkins file, but we will provide you with links to reference material. You'll be working most of the time within the scope of the stages keyword. You'll be defining specific stages, and within those stages, you'll be defining specific steps. In our example, the initialize stage has one step, which is a shell execute step that prints two environment variables to the screen. The build stage has one step, and it just prints the hello world message. Before we do an actual useful example, let's go to the Jenkins console and we'll define a Jenkins job that will execute this pipeline, and then we get to see what it looks like. Let's go. Okay guys, here we are in the Jenkins console. As you can see, I don't have any jobs defined at the moment. Before we proceed with any sort of job definition, I would like to go ahead and make sure you have what we need to proceed. So we'll go to Manage Jenkins, and then we'll proceed to Manage Plugins. If you see, I'll go down here to the letter P. Scrolling. Okay. Here I have a pipeline. That's the plugin, or I should say a suite of plugins that lets you orchestrate, automate simple or complex tasks. See Pipeline as Code with Jenkins for more details, version 2.5. If you have that under your Install tab, you're good to go. If not, no big deal. Just go to Available Plugins, type Pipeline here, and then you'll be able to proceed to install and then restart the Jenkins, and you'll be good to go. So anyway, back to the dashboard here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new job, and in this case we're going to tell Jenkins, hey, you're going to pick up your commands from a Jenkins files and you're going to pick up your code from a certain repository. Now think about the possibilities that you could hook up Jenkins that it will detect every time you commit changes to your repo. And then you would never ever have to come to this UI because your pipeline will be a code file. Okay, so for our example, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new job. We're going to define it as a pipeline. I'm going to type a name here. We're going to call it pipeline as code example. Define as pipeline and click OK. And here at the bottom where it says pipeline script, of course I'm not going to type it in here. I'm going to say take it directly from source code management. And that SCM is going to be Git. And we're going to paste here the URL for our repo. It doesn't require any credentials, and we're going to use the master branch. And the file is going to be Jenkins files, and it's going to be in the root of the repo. And that's it. I'm just going to click save. If I go back to the dashboard, I have this defined already. I could run it, and if I run it, it's going to go to the repository. It's going to pick up the code as well as the Jenkins file, and it's going to execute whatever commands are in the Jenkins file. Let's go have a look at that. This is the repo, and I'm using our own example web application that we've been using all along in this course. And now I just added a Jenkins file here. This is very similar to the one we just saw in the PowerPoint presentation. I just added 3 stages: init, build, and deploy. In this case, they don't do anything useful. It just outputs 3 messages: testing, building, and code deployed. So again, this isn't anything useful for the moment, but it will allow us to see and configure properly our code pipeline, and then we can come back, edit this file, and add actual building steps. Let's go back to Jenkins. We're going to try and execute our pipeline now and see what happens. It says build schedule. As you can see, it's running right away, and it completed. Perfect. Let's go into the job now. The first thing you'll notice here is that it shows init, build, and deploy. If we go back to our code editor here, you will see that it says init, build, and deploy. Those are the 3 stages that we define. If we click our specific build number here, build number 1, and click console output, go all the way to the bottom, you'll be able to see our messages here and finish with success. Great, our pipeline works. Now, what we need to do is add actual useful steps that will pick up the code, trigger a Maven build, and do an actual deploy to our Tomcat server. Before we end this lecture, I wanted to point out what we just saw, even though it was very, very simple. We have 3 stages that we just defined in our Jenkins file. And if we go back here to the job that we configure, all we really did was to define which repo we're going to use, and then we tell it to use a Jenkins file. We did nothing else. This reduces the number of times you're ever going to need to be inside your Jenkins web interface. You no longer need to leave your code editor to manage your pipeline. All you need to do is come here, change your Jenkins file, add steps or remove steps as needed, commit your changes, and that's it. You're good to go. As you know, right now, our pipeline doesn't do much other than print messages. So in the next lecture, we're going to make it more complex, and we're going to actually use Maven to build our project and deploy it to our Tomcat. Let's go.